There are moments in life when fatigue feels like more than tiredness. When the body no longer responds to rest, when the mornings no longer awaken with lightness, and when the mirror reflects not only the years, but something subtler, the dimming of a spark that once glowed behind the eyes, yet somewhere within the soul remembers. It remembers a time when energy flowed effortlessly, when breath felt sacred, and when existence itself vibrated with quiet strength. That remembrance is not imagination. It is a memory buried in the ancient code of your being, a code the wise once called Solomon's Code. In the days of Solomon, when wisdom was measured not by knowledge but by understanding, energy was seen as divine current, a living thread connecting heaven and earth, light and matter, soul and body. To renew it was not a matter of force but of harmony. Solomon's temple was not only built of stone, it was built upon vibration, proportion, sound and light. Within those sacred dimensions, the energy of life could flow without obstruction. The elders said that anyone who walked in alignment with those proportions would feel the vitality of creation itself flowing through their veins. As the centuries passed, the world forgot. People began to search for energy in stimulants, in excess, in noise. The modern age, with all its brilliance, lost touch with the silence that sustains vitality. We became seekers of quick awakenings, caffeine for the mind, pills for the body, distraction for the soul. Yet deep beneath this noise, a voice still whispers, there is another way. There is an ancient rhythm that never stopped breathing within us, waiting to be remembered. It begins not with effort but with stillness, the kind of stillness Solomon spoke of in the Psalms. Be still, and know that I am God. To be still is not to do nothing. It is to return to the origin of motion. Within that stillness, the current of energy reorganizes itself. The body listens. The heart resets its rhythm. The cells remember the song of life. Science today speaks of bioelectricity, the silent currents that flow through our nerves, our heart, even our skin. But the ancients knew it by another name, the breath of light. They believed that each human was a vessel for divine electricity, and that the way to renew it was not through consumption, but through alignment, the alignment of breath with thought, thought with word, and word with truth. When all three moved as one, energy was reborn, pure, restorative, luminous. After 50, when life becomes quieter, this wisdom calls more loudly. It is as if the soul begins to knock gently, reminding you that your energy was never lost, only scattered. The ancient code of Solomon teaches that energy does not fade with age, it refines itself. Like wine in the silence of the cellar, or light filtered through crystal, your life force becomes subtler, deeper, more radiant when guided back to harmony. Imagine a drop of water falling into still water. The ripples spread in perfect circles, each one balanced, each one equal. That is how Solomon's code renews the body, through the perfection of pattern. When your thoughts ripple in harmony with your emotions, and your emotions ripple in harmony with your breath, your energy field expands. You feel it as clarity, as calm alertness, as the quiet joy that needs no reason. This is the first revelation of the code. Energy is not taken, it is remembered. It is not added, it is awakened. And the key to awakening it lies in remembrance, not of memory, but of design. The wise king understood that the body itself was a temple, and that the same proportions that defined his temple of Jerusalem were present within the human form. The spine was the pillar, the heart was the altar, and the breath was the offering. To renew one's energy was to rebuild that inner temple each dawn through intention and awareness. He spoke of sacred geometry long before science gave it shape. Circles, spirals, ratios. These were not symbols of mathematics, but of life's unseen harmony. The spiral of the shell, the swirl of galaxies, the curl of a fern, all whispered the same message. Energy moves in divine order. When you live out of rhythm with that order, when you breathe shallowly, speak without sincerity, live without gratitude, the current weakens. But when you return to the sacred spiral of truth, the flow begins again. The ancients would begin each day facing the rising sun. Not to worship it, but to tune themselves to its rhythm. They knew that the morning light carried frequencies that awakened the pineal gland, what Solomon's mystics called the inner eye of light. This small gland, shaped like a pine cone, was seen as the receiver of divine energy, the organ that translated spiritual light into biological vitality. Modern science calls it the regulator of circadian rhythm, the source of melatonin, the balance of sleep and wakefulness. But to the old mystics it was more. It was the gateway through which divine wisdom entered the body. After 50, when hormonal tides shift and the body begins to crave balance rather than intensity, the pineal gland's quiet rhythm becomes a sacred ally. Its awakening restores not only sleep, but the flow of inner energy. The ancients would cleanse this gland through simple rituals, fasting from noise, silence at dawn, and drinking what they called living water, pure, mineral-rich water exposed to the first light of day. They believed that water, when touched by sunlight, absorbed information from the solar spectrum and carried it into the body like a message of renewal. This practice is not superstition. Today, biophysicists speak of structured water, water whose molecules align in hexagonal harmony, capable of storing and transmitting energy more efficiently. What science rediscovers, wisdom has never forgotten. Energy is not produced, it is transmitted through purity of form and intention. The ancients would bless their water with words of gratitude, not as a prayer to something external, but as a vibration that imprinted harmony upon the liquid itself. Solomon's priests understood that words carry frequency, and frequency shapes matter. The code reveals that every word you speak to yourself becomes a command to your cells. Say, "I am tired," and your body obeys. Say, "I am renewed," and your cells begin to reprogram. This is not magic, it is resonance. The same principle that allows sound to shatter glass, allows words to reorganize your inner energy. After 50, this truth becomes even more powerful, for the mind quiets and the words you choose carry greater weight. You are no longer speaking to impress, you are speaking to heal. The elders taught that to activate Solomon's code, one must begin each morning with a single act: alignment. Stand barefoot on the earth, face the light, breathe deeply 3 times and whisper gratitude. This simple ritual, they said, was enough to awaken the current of life within. The breath connects heaven and earth, the feet connect body and soil, and gratitude connects soul and creation. These 3 alignments awaken the triad of renewal. In this stillness, something extraordinary happens. The fatigue that seemed physical begins to dissolve from within, not because the body is suddenly stronger, but because the current begins to flow freely again. You start to feel lighter. Not the artificial energy of stimulation, but the quiet, enduring strength that comes from harmony. In the sacred writings attributed to Solomon, there is a hidden verse rarely spoken of. Wisdom strengthens the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. Scholars interpret this as intellect. The mystics interpret it as energy. For wisdom is energy, not information, but illumination. To be wise is to be lit from within, to move without friction, to act without depletion. The world today measures energy in calories and volts, but the ancients measured it in light, in the radiance of one's presence, in the warmth of one's gaze, in the steadiness of one's breath. The elders could tell who was in alignment by the glow of their skin, the calm in their voice, the silence between their words. Energy was seen not as a resource to be consumed, but as a reflection of inner order. And so, to renew your energy after 50, the journey begins not with doing but with remembering. Remembering that the temple was never destroyed, it was only neglected. Within you stands the same sacred architecture that once drew divine energy into stone and air. Within your breath hums the same rhythm that kept the lamps of the temple burning night and day. Within your heart burns the same light that Solomon called the wisdom of God dwelling among men. As you begin to feel this remembrance stir, your awareness shifts. Fatigue becomes invitation. Slowness becomes sacred. The pauses in your day are no longer emptiness. They are gateways through which the current of renewal flows. When you sit in silence and feel your pulse, you are touching the rhythm of creation. When you drink water with reverence, You are participating in the ritual of light. When you wake and feel the warmth of the sun on your face, you are reading a message written in photons, a message that says, you are still alive, the current still flows. The first phase of Solomon's Code is awakening to this simple truth. Energy responds to awareness. The more you honor it, the more it returns. The more you listen to the body's subtle messages, thirst, breath, warmth, the more it entrusts you with vitality. The body was never your enemy. It is your temple, your ally, your most faithful messenger. At dawn, when light touches the eyelids, imagine that each ray carries not just brightness, but intelligence, that the same divine order that governs galaxies also governs your heartbeat, that the fatigue you feel is not failure, but a signal that your current seeks redirection. When you align yourself with that divine current, through breath, through gratitude, through silence, you are reactivating what Solomon knew, that the highest wisdom is harmony. Harmony is not perfection. It is listening. It is the gentle adjustment that brings the instrument back in tune. Your body, after years of service and resilience, deserves that tuning. It is not breaking down, it is asking for music again. And so, as you stand in the quiet of morning, breathing slowly, you begin to remember the ancient language of energy, a language older than speech, spoken through vibration, light, and stillness. In that remembrance, something stirs, a warmth at the base of the spine, a calm in the chest, a clarity behind the eyes. It is not imagination, it is the current awakening, whispering, you were never empty, only unaligned. This is the beginning of Solomon's Code. Not a formula, but a return to the silent architecture of the soul, where the sacred and the physical meet, the place where breath becomes light, where thought becomes vibration, where awareness becomes renewal. In that place, energy is not created or destroyed. It simply remembers what it always was. And in that remembrance, you begin to feel the first spark of restoration, not dramatic, not sudden, but deep and real. The fatigue softens, the eyes brighten, the heart feels steady again. It is as if life itself, the great current that moves oceans and galaxies, has remembered your name. That is the whisper of the code. It does not shout, it invites. It does not promise youth, but it restores grace. And as the light of dawn spills across the horizon, you sense that this is only the beginning. The gates of the inner temple are opening, and the current is ready to return. There is a moment in every seeker's journey when the silence begins to speak, when what was once myth begins to breathe as memory, when ancient symbols once carved into temple walls seem to rise within one's own body. That is the moment the code begins to reveal itself. Solomon understood that life is not random. He saw the universe as a living architecture, built on geometry, proportion, and resonance. In his writings, he spoke not only of wisdom but of measure, not only of faith but of form. He knew that everything that exists, from the spiral of the galaxies to the rhythm of the human heart, vibrates to a hidden order, and he called this order the measure of light. The measure of light was not brightness. It was harmony, the perfect alignment between spirit and matter. The elders said that Solomon could hear the tones of creation itself, that when he built the temple, every stone was placed not by strength, but by vibration. It was said that the stones moved themselves, guided by a sound only the pure could hear. That sound, that resonance, was the secret key to energy renewal. It was the same tone that hums beneath all life, the same pulse that moves through stars and rivers. To live in harmony with that tone is to live within the current of creation. To live against it is to drain one's strength into noise. When a person lives without alignment, when they speak against their truth, when they fill their life with dissonance, their inner current becomes fragmented. Energy begins to leak through unseen cracks. Resentment, regret, resistance. But when one begins to listen again, to tune themselves to the measure of light, the current returns. It flows not from outside, but from within, as if the soul were a hidden fountain rediscovered. The ancients taught that Solomon's Code was built on 4 forces, 4 pillars of living energy: Each one corresponds to an element, a frequency, a truth. The first is light, the energy of wisdom. The second is water, the energy of purification. The third is breath, the energy of motion. And the fourth is word, the energy of creation. Together they form the living temple of vitality. Light awakens, water cleanses, breath circulates, word manifests. When these four act in unity, the energy body becomes whole again. Every cell becomes a prism of divine intelligence, capable of receiving and transmitting life. In modern terms, we might call this coherence, the state in which heart, mind, and body move as one. Scientists who study heart resonance have discovered something extraordinary. When the heartbeat, breath, and brain waves synchronize, the entire body enters a state of repair. Stress hormones drop, blood pressure stabilizes, and the immune system strengthens. But the ancients did not need machines to know this. They could feel it. Solomon's priests used sound to maintain this coherence. They chanted in precise tones, designed to vibrate specific chambers of the body. These were not mere hymns, they were frequencies that restructured energy. When they sang, the walls of the temple seemed to hum with them. The air became alive. The sound restored balance between heaven and earth. After 50, when the rhythms of life begin to slow, the body yearns for coherence again. The fatigue you feel is not weakness. It is the body's plea for resonance. It is calling you back to harmony. When you realign your breath with your heartbeat, when you speak words that uplift rather than diminish, when you bathe your body in morning light and pure water, you are rewriting the code into your cells. In the hidden texts of the Key of Solomon, there is a phrase few understand. The light that restores is the light that obeys. It means that divine energy flows only where it is welcomed, where it is honored, not forced. That is why vitality cannot be stolen or consumed. It can only be invited. And the invitation is made through alignment. Every morning, the wise would open their hands to the sun and whisper, "Let the light remember me." It was not worship. It was communication. They believed that light was conscious, that photons carried the memory of the divine blueprint. When the skin received sunlight with gratitude, the cells awakened, as if remembering their original design. Today, science calls this photobiomodulation, the healing effect of light on mitochondria, the tiny powerhouses of our cells. What the mystics described as divine remembrance, we now describe as cellular activation. Different words, same truth. This is the revelation. Solomon's Code is not superstition. It is ancient science written in poetry. Every commandment, every ritual, every chant was a metaphor for energy alignment. The temple was not only a building, it was a map of the human system. The Holy of Holies, hidden deep within, represented the heart, where the divine current meets flesh. The altar was the solar plexus, where energy is transformed into action. The outer court symbolized the senses, through which spirit touches the world. To renew energy is to walk that inner temple once again, step by sacred step, until you reach the Holy of Holies within. There, behind the veil of distraction and fatigue, burns the flame that never went out, the flame of divine energy that age cannot touch. Modern science now confirms what Solomon knew intuitively. The human body emits light. Researchers have captured faint photons radiating from our cells, a glow invisible to the eye, but measurable by instruments. The healthier the person, the steadier the light. The more coherent the energy, the brighter the emission. When the ancients spoke of, "Let your light shine before men," they were not speaking metaphorically. They were speaking energetically. The Wise King's Code teaches that energy follows purity. Purity not of perfection, but of intention. When your heart is sincere, your body becomes transparent to light. The current flows freely, the glow increases and vitality returns. Solomon's writings often use the image of flowing water. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him. To the mystics, water was the faithful messenger, carrying divine intention wherever it was sent. They believed that human thought could impress its pattern upon water, that every emotion, every prayer left a mark upon its crystalline structure. Centuries later, photographs of frozen water crystals would reveal what they already knew, that gratitude creates beauty, and anger distorts it. The code teaches, speak to your water, bless it, give it purpose. When you drink it, you are not just hydrating your body, you are programming your being. Say the words Solomon once whispered to his own cup. Let this water remember life. Feel it entering your body not as liquid, but as light. Imagine it carrying harmony to every cell, awakening dormant strength, washing away the noise of years. This is how energy renewal begins, not by addition, but by intention. Every small act of awareness becomes sacred. Every breath becomes a prayer. Every sip becomes a covenant between your soul and the source that created you. In Solomon's time, the people understood that aging was not decay, it was refinement. The body, like gold, becomes purer as the fire of experience burns away impurity. Energy, when guided by wisdom, transforms from raw power into radiant stillness. After 50, you are not losing energy. You are learning to wield it more wisely. You are moving from the fire of youth to the light of spirit. There is a line in the wisdom of Solomon that says, "The Spirit of the Lord filleth the world, and that which containeth all things hath knowledge of the voice." This was the essence of his understanding, that energy, spirit, and creation are one continuum. The voice you speak, the thought you form, the breath you take, all ripple through the same living field. When you align your voice with truth, your thought with peace, your breath with gratitude, the field responds. The world itself begins to conspire in your renewal. That is why some days feel miraculous. You wake rested. The air feels lighter. Colors seem brighter. You feel for a moment young again. That is the code answering your resonance. That is creation responding to harmony. In his temple, Solomon had one chamber hidden from all but the priests. It was called the Chamber of Resonance. There, sound and light were woven together in sacred rituals. When a person was ill or weak, they would be brought into that chamber. Candles would be lit in a precise geometric pattern, and chants would fill the air in resonant tones. The patient would simply sit in silence, bathed in vibration. No medicine, no herbs, only frequency. And often, after hours of stillness, they would walk out renewed. To the modern mind, this may sound mysterious. Yet today, hospitals use sound waves to break kidney stones, light therapy to heal wounds, electromagnetic pulses to restore heart rhythm. The ancients were not primitive. They were simply listening to the same truths that science has rediscovered, that the body is not mechanical, but musical. And when the melody is restored, health returns. After 50, you become the conductor of your own symphony. Each thought, each word, each emotion is an instrument. When you allow dissonance, fear, regret, bitterness, the harmony falters. But when you tune your instruments daily through stillness, gratitude, and breath, the symphony of your life begins to play again. Energy flows not from youth, but from unity. This is the hidden blueprint of Solomon's code: to live in proportion, to speak in resonance, to breathe in alignment, and to shine in truth. Every act, no matter how small, either builds or dismantles the temple. Every moment of awareness is a stone placed back in its rightful position. The revelation is simple. You are not aging. You are returning to design. The fatigue you feel is the body's sacred way of asking for alignment. The weakness is not punishment. It is instruction. It says, slow down, breathe, remember. For within you lies the same light that once moved the stones of the temple, the same vibration that commanded the wind, the same code that spoke through Solomon's lips. The years have not dimmed it, only veiled it. And as you begin to uncover it again, you start to feel what he must have felt when he said, "The light of the righteous rejoiceth." In that light you rediscover a power that is gentle yet unbreakable, the power of coherence, the power of peace, the power of living once again in harmony with the divine architecture of your being. There comes a point in every awakening when the external world begins to fade into the background, and something within starts to move quietly, like a river beneath the surface. It is not emotion nor thought, it is energy, returning to its original flow. You can feel it as warmth, as subtle vibration, as life reawakening where fatigue once lived. This is the third phase of Solomon's code: transformation. Transformation is not an event. It is a return to divine order through surrender. Solomon taught that the energy of God does not enter through force, but through openness. He said, "The heart of the wise teaches his mouth and adds learning to his lips." In other words, when the heart is open, the current flows and speech becomes creation. Energy renewal, therefore, begins when you stop fighting your tiredness and begin listening to it. The body does not speak in words, it speaks in sensations. Every ache, every sigh, every heartbeat carries instruction. After 50, those instructions become sacred. The body slows down not because it is breaking, but because it wants you to hear. The silence between heartbeats becomes a sanctuary. The pauses between breaths become gateways. It is here, in the stillness, that the transformation begins. Solomon's temple was filled with silence. Even the priests would walk softly, their garments muffling sound. In that stillness, the presence could be felt, not as something outside, but as vibration within the bones. When energy becomes still, it gathers strength. Just as a lake reflects heaven when it is still, so the body reflects divinity when it rests. Modern science calls this restoration. Cells repair most effectively in states of deep rest and calm. During sleep, the body detoxifies, regenerates, and rewrites its cellular memory. But there is a deeper rest than sleep, the rest of surrender. When you breathe consciously, when you let go of resistance, when you allow life to be exactly as it is, your body enters the sacred chamber of repair. This is the hidden core of Solomon's Code, restoration through stillness. Imagine for a moment that energy is light flowing through a glass vessel. When the vessel is agitated, the light scatters. But when it becomes still, the light passes through clearly, illuminating everything it touches. After 50, your body is that vessel. It has carried decades of light, emotion, and experience. To renew it, you must first allow it to become still enough for light to pass through again. Solomon's mystics practiced what they called the breath of the temple. It was a slow, rhythmic breathing pattern. Inhale through the nose for 7 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 7. They believed that the number 7 mirrored divine completion, the rhythm of creation itself. As they breathed, they visualized golden light descending from above the head into the spine, then spreading through the body. This was not imagination, but alignment. Each breath was an act of reconstruction, rebuilding the inner temple stone by stone. They taught that within the spine lies the ladder of light, a channel connecting heaven and earth. Modern anatomy calls it the central nervous system. When the breath moves consciously through it, the dormant currents awaken. The Hindus later called it Kundalini, the Christians called it the holy fire, but the source is the same, divine energy returning through alignment. Those who practiced this breathing ritual spoke of an indescribable peace, a quiet joy that required no reason. They would often sit in silence afterward, eyes closed, faces serene, as if surrounded by invisible light. And those who came near them would feel it too, a radiant calm, a field of peace that seemed to renew others simply by presence. That is what true energy is, not agitation, but resonance. The power that transforms does not come from doing more, but from being more aligned. You become a conduit, not a generator. Life flows through you, not from you. In this state, healing becomes effortless. The body, freed from tension, reorganizes itself. Blood flow improves, cells regenerate, hormones balance. But beyond the physical, something even greater happens. The soul remembers its original frequency. The old patterns of fear, resentment, fatigue begin to dissolve, replaced by light. Solomon's Code teaches that every cell contains divine intelligence, what he called the spark of wisdom. This spark cannot die, it only dims when neglected. To reignite it, one must remember 3 principles: reverence, rhythm, and rest. Reverence is gratitude, rhythm is alignment, rest is surrender. Together they create the conditions for the spark to glow again. In ancient times, the priests would rest on the Sabbath not only out of obedience but out of energetic wisdom. They knew that every 7 days the body completes a cycle of cellular renewal. Resting on the 7th day allowed that cycle to integrate. The rhythm was sacred. Today, many live outside of rhythm, sleeping under artificial light, eating without awareness, moving without rest. The result is dissonance, energy without direction. But when you honor the rhythm again, when you sleep in darkness, wake with light, eat with gratitude, and move with breath, the current finds its way home. The fatigue softens, the mind clears, and a deeper vitality takes root. Transformation also means forgiveness, the purification of emotional energy. Solomon wrote, "A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones." He was not being poetic. He was describing energy flow. Resentment and grief constrict it. Joy and compassion release it. Modern medicine confirms this. Stress chemicals literally weaken the immune system, while gratitude strengthens it. What Solomon called a merry heart, science now calls coherence. Forgiveness, then, is not a moral act. It is energetic medicine. When you forgive, you release the weight that distorts your frequency. You let go of the story that keeps your energy trapped. The moment you do, the current begins to flow again. You can feel it. The breath deepens, the chest opens, the eyes soften. Energy returns because harmony returns. After 50, forgiveness becomes essential. Not because of morality, but because of longevity. The body cannot sustain resentment. The heart cannot thrive in tension. Forgiveness is the breath of the soul, the washing of the temple floor. And when you release, you create space for divine energy to return. Transformation is not loud. It does not come with thunder or lightning. It is the slow, steady return of light through silence. It is the morning you wake without pain, the meal that suddenly satisfies more deeply. The quiet moment when you realize the fatigue is gone. It has turned into peace. Solomon's sages taught that transformation is the highest form of healing because it restores harmony without resistance. When the code is active, life reorganizes around balance. The things that once drained you, conflict, noise, fear, lose their grip. You no longer seek energy from others. You generate it through alignment. You no longer chase youth. You radiate vitality from wisdom. One of Solomon's lost teachings speaks of the oil of the lamp. It says that every human carries within them a lamp of divine fire, but the oil that sustains it must be pure. That oil is your attention. Whatever you focus on becomes your fuel. When you dwell on pain, you burn it. When you dwell on gratitude, you refine it. The quality of your attention determines the quality of your energy. This is the turning point of the journey, the moment when you realize that energy is not given by time, but by awareness. Every thought is a spark. Every emotion is a vibration. Every breath is a prayer. The renewal you seek was never lost. It was scattered through inattention. Now, through stillness, forgiveness, and reverence, you are gathering it again. As the transformation deepens, something begins to shift in perception. You start to feel connected to everything: the trees, the wind, the sound of your own breath. You begin to sense energy not as something mystical, but as life itself, breathing through you, loving you, sustaining you. You walk slower, but each step feels sacred. You speak less, but each word carries power. You rest more, but your presence becomes luminous. This is what Solomon meant by wisdom: to live in such harmony that even stillness becomes strength. The transformation is complete when you no longer seek energy, because you have become energy, flowing, radiant, eternal. The fatigue of the past was the shadow of separation. The renewal of now is the light of remembrance. And as that light grows, you understand. The temple was never somewhere to visit. It was always you. There is a quiet threshold between understanding and realization. The moment when knowledge becomes lived experience, when wisdom ceases to be something read or heard and becomes something felt in the pulse, in the breath, in the silence behind your eyes. That threshold is the awakening Solomon spoke of. The ancients described it as the dawn that rises without sun, an inner illumination that turns awareness itself into light. You begin to see differently. The world no longer appears as fragments. The ordinary becomes sacred again. A glass of water glows with purpose. The wind carries messages. The pulse beneath your skin becomes a prayer drum. What once seemed like simple biology now feels like the architecture of God breathing through you. This is not metaphor. It is direct communion. The code has begun to awaken inside you. In this awakening, energy becomes visible, not through the eyes but through knowing. You begin to feel the radiance that surrounds living things. The tree no longer stands still. It hums. The rain does not fall, it sings. The very air feels charged, intelligent, aware. This is the field Solomon called the breath of God moving upon the waters. Every vibration, every heartbeat, every photon is part of that living breath. He understood that energy is the signature of consciousness, that vitality is not stored in the muscles or blood, but in awareness itself. When awareness aligns with truth, energy flows like lightning through a clear sky. When awareness drifts into fear or distraction, clouds gather and the current slows. The secret was never how to create energy, it was how to become transparent to it. The awakening begins when you realize that every act of alignment, every breath taken with gratitude, every word spoken with reverence, every moment of stillness, clears the clouds. Slowly you start to glow. Others may notice before you do. They may say, "You look peaceful," or "You seem lighter," not knowing that what they perceive is the light returning through you. After 50, this awakening takes a particular grace. The ego softens, the striving quiets. What once felt urgent now feels unnecessary. You begin to sense that the true purpose of life was never achievement, but attunement. The code reveals that energy renewal is not about becoming more powerful, but more pure. So pure that divine energy can flow through you without resistance. Solomon wrote that wisdom entereth into the soul of the just and maketh her dwelling in the light of understanding. This was his way of describing vibrational awakening. When the soul and mind begin to move at the same frequency, the divine enters naturally. It does not descend, it emerges. The light was never gone, it was buried beneath noise. Now, with the noise dissolving, the divine current becomes steady. You feel it behind the heart, a warmth that rises like dawn, gentle yet unstoppable. It spreads to the hands, to the head, to the breath. It feels as if life itself is breathing you. You are no longer the doer, but the vessel. The fatigue that once defined your days transforms into flow. The current that once felt distant now lives within every exhale. The mystics called this the marriage of heaven and flesh. It is the union of energy and matter, the point where light slows down just enough to become touchable. It is the divine current remembering its own reflection in human form. When you reach this union, age loses its meaning. The body remains, but the identification with its limits fades. You feel timeless, not young, eternal. In ancient temples, initiates would undergo rituals to simulate this awakening. They would lie in chambers of darkness for 3 days, surrounded by symbols of transformation, serpents, lilies, suns. In the darkness, they would breathe the breath of the temple until their inner light ignited. When they emerged, they were said to shine faintly, their skin radiant, their eyes luminous. It was not superstition, it was resonance. They had entered coherence with the divine field. Today you do not need temples or priests. The body itself is the temple, and silence is the ritual. When you close your eyes and breathe deeply, when you allow gratitude to fill the heart, you recreate the same conditions. The divine field is not somewhere distant. It surrounds you, permeates you, sustains you. The awakening is simply realizing that you were never separate from it. Science now approaches this mystery through the language of quantum physics. It speaks of unified fields, of non-local consciousness, of particles responding to observation. Solomon would have smiled, for he already knew. He said, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." In the modern tongue, observation shapes reality. The heart is the observer, and the field responds. When you begin to live from this understanding, every thought becomes sacred architecture. Every feeling becomes creation in motion. Energy no longer leaks through worry or resentment. It amplifies through peace and trust. You become the designer of your inner temple once more, and the divine current fills it effortlessly. In this state, even the smallest gestures become miracles. Drinking water with awareness becomes communion. Walking barefoot becomes grounding to the current of the earth. Listening to another person with full presence becomes a transmission of light. The code makes life itself the ritual. Awakening does not mean the absence of pain. It means the presence of perspective. Even pain becomes a messenger, a reminder of where energy needs attention, where light needs to enter. You no longer resist it, you listen to it. You treat it not as enemy, but as teacher, and in listening, you heal. Solomon's mystics describe this as the heart of fire within the body of water. Fire and water, energy and emotion, finally in harmony. The warmth of awareness balances the coolness of surrender. Together they sustain life. The true awakening is realizing that both are divine. Strength without gentleness burns, gentleness without strength fades, but together they create light that nourishes. This balance is what the modern world forgot. We chased energy through stimulation, caffeine, ambition, noise without understanding that the truest power comes from rest. We glorified motion and feared stillness, but awakening reveals that stillness is not emptiness, it is the birthplace of all energy. When you rest in awareness, you are not inactive, you are in communion with the source. Solomon taught that to command the forces of nature, one must first command oneself. The priests interpreted this as self-control. The mystics knew it meant alignment. When the mind is silent and the heart pure, nature responds. Animals grow calm around you. Water tastes sweeter. Even time feels slower, as if bending to your rhythm. This is not fantasy, it is resonance, the field adjusting to your coherence. At this stage, words lose importance. Presence becomes your language. You walk through life differently, slower, lighter, aware of the invisible current that moves through all things. You begin to understand why Solomon called wisdom the tree of life. For every thought rooted in peace bears fruit in vitality. Every breath taken with gratitude nourishes the soul. Every act done in awareness renews the energy body. This is the true meaning of eternal youth, not the illusion of unwrinkled skin, but the radiance of an unburdened soul. When the current flows freely, the eyes remain bright, the skin glows, the voice carries warmth. You radiate life because you have stopped resisting it. You have become transparent to the divine current. In this awakening, even death loses its shadow. You begin to feel that life and death are not opposites, but phases of the same current. Energy does not die, it changes form. The light that animates you is the same light that shines in stars. To remember this is to be free from fear. Solomon called it the peace that surpasses understanding. And in that peace, something extraordinary happens. Gratitude becomes your natural state, not forced, not practiced, but spontaneous, like breath. You find yourself giving thanks for sunlight, for silence, for the body that still carries you, for every lesson written into your years. The energy of gratitude multiplies itself. The more you thank life, the more life flows through you. This is the infinite loop of renewal, the code in motion. Now you begin to realize why the ancients revered Solomon not for wealth or power, but for balance. His secret was not in possession, but in perception. He saw the divine pattern in all things. The same ratio that governed the temple's design governed his breath, his speech, his thoughts. He lived as geometry embodied, proportioned in spirit, balanced in emotion, luminous in energy. That is why even the winds obeyed his word. You too can live this way. The code is not a relic. It is a pattern written into every human being. When you align with it, energy obeys you not because you command it, but because you have become one with its rhythm. You no longer ask for healing, you emanate it. You no longer chase peace, you exude it. You no longer seek energy, you are energy remembering itself. This awakening is not the end of the journey, but the unveiling of what was always present. You see that there was never a separation between spirit and body, heaven and earth, divine and human. The current was always flowing, you simply stopped feeling it. Now, with awareness restored, you walk as Solomon walked, in the world, but not of its noise. Every moment becomes prayer, every breath becomes worship, every heartbeat becomes harmony. This is the secret that the wise have carried through ages. The greatest temple ever built is the awakened human being, luminous, peaceful and alive with the current of God. And when the sun sets and the day grows still, you will feel that same current move within you, not as memory but as truth. The divine flow, once forgotten, now sings quietly through your veins, reminding you. You are the vessel, the temple, the code itself made flesh. When the journey reaches its quietest moment, a different kind of wisdom begins to speak, not through words, not through visions, but through the soft pulse of being. It is as if all the teachings, all the symbols, all the rituals of Solomon's code dissolve into a single truth, too vast for language, that life, in its purest form, is remembrance. The remembrance that we are light remembering itself through matter, spirit rediscovering its reflection in flesh, heaven recognizing its echo in a single human breath. At this stage, there is no need to seek. The energy you once pursued now flows through you as effortlessly as the tide returning to the shore. The body no longer feels like a weight to carry. It feels like a sacred vessel, perfectly designed to channel the divine current. You sit in silence and sense the pulse beneath your hand. It is not just a heartbeat, it is the rhythm of creation repeating itself through you. In this silence, you begin to see how everything that once seemed fragmented, the moments of joy, the seasons of fatigue, the years of seeking, and were all part of one continuous unfolding. You realize that the days of weariness were not punishment, but initiation, each one carving space within you for more light to enter. Fatigue was never the absence of energy. It was the body's sacred pause before remembering how to receive it again. Solomon understood this. He wrote that to everything there is a season, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to break down and a time to build up. He was not only speaking of the earth's rhythm, but of the soul's. There is a time for expansion and a time for stillness, a time to act and a time to listen, a time to burn with youth and a time to glow with wisdom. In the rhythm of these opposites lies the eternal equilibrium that sustains all energy. You have now entered that rhythm. The energy that once surged and retreated now hums steadily. The mind, once restless, has found its natural quiet. You no longer analyze or control, you observe. And through that observation, the field of life reorganizes itself around you. The heart and the breath move together. The inner and the outer worlds begin to mirror each other. This is coherence in its purest form, the body and soul vibrating as one instrument in the orchestra of creation. In that unity, something extraordinary happens. You stop seeing separation. The sunlight filtering through the window feels like a continuation of your own breath. The sound of distant laughter feels like an extension of your joy. The movements of your body, once mechanical, now feel like prayer. You understand that there was never any difference between the divine and the ordinary. Both were made of the same substance. Light slowed into form. The ancient mystics of Solomon's lineage spoke of this moment as the Sabbath of the soul. It is the seventh day of your inner creation, the day of rest when the work of renewal is complete. The code has done its work, not by adding something new, but by revealing what was always whole. The divine architect within you has restored balance. The temple now glows from within. If you were to look into a mirror now, you might notice something subtle, a calm in the eyes, a softness around the mouth, a serenity that does not depend on youth. It is the face of someone who has made peace with the rhythm of life. The light in your gaze is not reflection, it is emanation. You have become what Solomon described as a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters and streams from Lebanon. You are the living well from which energy renews itself endlessly. Reflection is not nostalgia. It is the act of witnessing yourself as part of something eternal. The years that have passed no longer carry regret, they carry wisdom. Every mistake becomes a teacher. Every loss becomes a purification. Every joy becomes a blessing multiplied by time. You realize that you have never truly aged. You have simply deepened, like a river carving its path through stone, becoming clearer as it moves. In that awareness, gratitude becomes the final prayer. It is not spoken. It arises spontaneously, like light returning to the dawn. You find yourself thanking the breath, the body, the sunlight, the silence. You thank the fatigue that once frightened you, for it led you here. You thank the stillness that revealed your strength. You thank the invisible hand that guided you through every shadow until you could see the light not as something distant, but as something woven into every cell. This is the essence of Solomon's Code. Not power, not possession, not ritual, but remembrance. To remember that the same intelligence that moves galaxies moves your blood, that the same rhythm that stirs the ocean tides governs your heartbeat, that the same divine geometry that shapes the stars is written into your very DNA. To remember this is to live in harmony with all that is. Now, when you wake in the morning, you no longer rush. You feel the light before opening your eyes and you breathe as if greeting an old friend. When you drink water, you feel it blessing your body. When you walk, you feel the earth rising gently to meet your feet. Every act becomes a sacred exchange, energy flowing in, gratitude flowing out. This reciprocity sustains you more deeply than any medicine or food. It is the rhythm of life restored. And when the world grows heavy, as it sometimes will, you no longer fear the darkness. You know it as the womb of light. The same force that once drained you now renews you, for you have learned to rest within it. Solomon's wisdom whispers through time. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. The flame within you does not flicker because it is weak, but because it is alive, breathing, learning, remembering. The elders said that those who truly awakened to the code would one day walk among others, quietly radiating peace, healing not through words or touch, but through presence alone. Their energy would be so coherent, so attuned to divine order, that chaos could not approach them. Their silence would be medicine. Their smile would calm storms of the mind. Perhaps you are becoming one of them, a keeper of the living code. This transformation is not meant to separate you from the world, but to reunite you with it in a deeper way. You will still live, work, love, and laugh. But each act will now carry the fragrance of awareness. You will speak fewer words, but each will carry weight. You will seek less, but find more. You will need less, but give more. And in giving, your energy will multiply, for that is the divine economy. What flows through you increases within you. In moments of reflection, you may recall the beginning, the fatigue, the questions, the quiet longing for vitality. You may smile gently, realizing that what you sought was never missing. The treasure was buried in your own stillness, waiting for you to stop searching long enough to see it. Solomon's Code was not a secret to be learned, but a truth to be lived. The energy of life renews itself through harmony. Now, as you sit in this awareness, feel the current once more. Soft, steady, ancient. It hums through your bones like a song without words, older than time yet newly born in each breath. It is the same current that built the temple, that moved the sun, that stirred your first heartbeat. You have not simply remembered the code, you have become it. The final teaching is silence. For in silence, there is nothing to prove, nothing to earn, nothing to fix. There is only the pulse of creation within you, calm, unbroken, infinite. That pulse is the true definition of energy, and it will never leave you. It is the whisper of God that says, "You are my reflection in motion." So rest now, not in exhaustion but in peace. The work is done, the current flows, the temple stands, the code is alive within you. And as you exhale, feel the universe exhaling with you. One breath, one rhythm, one light. Because in truth, Solomon's Code was never about learning how to renew your energy after 50. It was about remembering that you were never separate from the source of energy at all. You were, and always will be, the living bridge between heaven and earth, the sacred geometry of life, walking, breathing, and shining as proof that the divine current never dies.